Hello, all, and welcome back to Maps and Graps. Excited to be doing the show. Of course, it's tournament season just about everywhere, and I'm gonna be honest, some are definitely more disappointing than others. But all of the positive because I'm actually really excited for this one. As always, I am your host, Lyric Swinton, and I'm joined by a repeat guest. We have Ben here. You heard from him when we were talking about, New Beginning in Sapporo and New Japan Cup not too long ago. So, hi, how are you?
I'm really well, thank you. Thank you for having me on again. And like you said, New Japan Cup, that's another topic. Slightly disappointing tournament happening at the minute, but really, really looking forward to Champion Carnival. So excited to get into it.
Definitely. All Japan has just, I'm going to be honest, in the midst of all the turmoil and management stuff, they continue to be, in my opinion, I think my favorite Puro promotion right now. They've been super solid. Love that roster. For those of you who haven't been keeping up, I recommend going and looking at the most recent junior heavyweight title match, Rising Hayato versus Dan Tamura. Hayato finally won the junior heavyweight belt over in All Japan. What a match. I'm just super excited, and obviously the big tournament is coming up, which is Champion Carnival. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and let's get into it. So the blocks were released. Currently, we're about a man short on both sides, which, there's some theories out about. But currently, the lineup for Champion Carnival this year, we have in Block A, we have Shotaro Ashino, we have Kento Miyahara, Yuma Yagi, Hakuto Omori, Rin Ayabi, Kuroshio, Tokyo, Japan, and Cyrus. And in Block B, we have Suwama, Ruki Honda, Jun Saito, Yuma Anzai, Hideki Suzuki, Hartley Jackson, and Road Crew. So before we get into all the dream matches and everything, what were your initial reactions when you saw the blocks be announced at the All Japan show?
Yeah, so and like I said earlier, generally these tournaments have 16 people. So first thing that stood out, that we'd expect there to be 2 more people added to the tournament, or perhaps they were just intending on running a tighter ship this year. I doubt it. So that was the first thing that stood out. The second thing was, for me personally, I feel like the A block is quite heavily weighted towards. There seems to be more of the top end of the talent in A block.
Yes.
Which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I mean, you still have obviously Sawama and Yuma Anzai in B block, but it kind of leaves things open. So perhaps we're looking at someone in B block going on a big tear and not losing very much at all. Yes. Maybe a couple people, as you've got 3 or 4 people in there who can really just take losses, I think. But yeah, super excited for the whole tournament. And like you said, there are some pretty nice dream matches coming up in the
year. I think also one thing that stood out to me is that I feel like for the home team, this is pretty stacked as far as I think this is a great showcase of the All Japan roster. I think that everybody who has basically a roster slot on this tournament from the All Japan side is fantastic. And I'm pretty excited to see just about everybody. However, the foreigners leave a lot to be imagined, leave a lot to be desired. There's some rumors, I'm not sure if they're true or not, that, I guess All Japan expected to get some talent from WWE. And that just didn't pan out, as we see. And, you could kind of see that maybe possibly in B block, because you have a couple guys who it's just I've literally never heard of. I think that, maybe next year we'll see some more foreigners. And honestly, I kind of expected to see some from some other Puro organizations, in the past. You've seen Big Japan be in the Champion Carnival. You've seen Elite. And honestly, because they had sent over Yuma Anzai to the N1, I was expecting maybe somebody from Noah. Like, imagine, I think Masakita Miya would have been perfect, you know, in a tournament like this, would have fit in quite seamlessly. And honestly, we've talked about this before, but I think that New Japan guys could have greatly benefited from being a part of this tournament. You know, some of the younger guys, I think that they could have really benefited from being a part of this tournament. But, you know, like you said, we have a little bit shorter. But then also in the most recent big All Japan show, it was revealed that, you know, Rei Saito is cleared. And he not only wants to challenge for Suwaman Suzuki's tag belts alongside his brother June, he also wants into Champion Carnival, which makes a lot of sense for him to. I would probably maybe add him into B block, or honestly, I'd add him to A block. I'd add him to A block, and then, you know, that means another man should be, you know, added on B block, and hopefully it's the current Triple Crown champion, I would say Katsuhiko Nakajima, you know?
Yeah, I think, where Ray goes, I think depends entirely on who his counterpart is also joining the tournament. And I'd say, if it's going to be Nakajima, which I think we both kind of think it is likely to be, I think it's if you know, if he's not going to be the finalist, he's going to be up there. And I think the best way to do that would have to put Nakajima in B block, because I think if you have Nakajima in that A block, you have him with, you know, Kento, Yuma. It then gets a bit tricky to fit them all in, I think. So B block for Nakajima, if he gets put in, would leave obviously Rei Saito with A block. And it's, you know, nice to have him in tournament. I think both him and his brother were in it last year, perhaps even the year before, but definitely last year. So glad he's fit and healthy again. Good to see him, and looking forward to them challenging again for the titles.
You know, I am really, really, really like excited. I think like there's so many different matchups that can happen, and I think also like All Japan just has like an embarrassment of riches right now. Like there's so many cool, I think, guys on both sides, and I think also that I'm reminded, I think that Nakajima made the best possible decision by going to All Japan. I think like sometimes like you can be a small fish in a big pond, or you can be a big fish in a small pond. And I think like this was probably the best decision for him to really shine, be a main event player. And also like, you know, just be, you know, in the midst of, I think, some fresh matchups and also help develop some younger talent while still, obviously, he's still fairly young himself to be, you know, on that top level. So I think that putting him in B block, there's a lot of opportunity there with the Anzai matchup, with the Honda matchup. You know, I think Sawama is always going to be a fun, you know, match. I don't think we've seen that singles match quite yet since Nakajima's been in All Japan. But let's get into stories of, I think that some guys definitely have a better chance of winning than others. And when I first looked at this, if you ask me to pick a winner right now, I'm going to pick Kento. I think Kento wins. I think that he's on his redemption path. Like, he's lost to Nakajima twice. And so he's on that journey back. And I think, like, right now, like, he's hotter than ever. I think, you know, that's my win. That's my pick so far.
I think Kento is always going to be not a safe pick, but a very confident pick. Always, even if he doesn't have the belt, he's going to be fan favorite. And like you said, he's got his 2 losses, needs to get a win back. Winning this tournament kind of sets him up on that path to getting a big match against Nakajima, maybe winning the belt back, but at least, you know, I think he has to get a win back at least. So very good story, sets it up. And obviously he won it a few years ago, 2019, I think Kento won last. So I think, you know, when you look at the lineup, my eye goes straight to Kento as well. There are definitely other candidates. You know, Yuma is always, again, he's having a big time at the minute. You know, big match against Takeshita and DDT. So wouldn't be a far shout, I don't think, to go for Yuma Ayagi. And on the other side of the bracket, I think you've got to. I think you have to take a look with how the B block currently stands. Without, we can't say, Nakajima is not confirmed yet. May not even be in it. But as it currently stands, I do look to Yuma Anzai as someone who I wouldn't be surprised if he was in the final. I'll put it that way. Just because of how it's set up at the minute, there's lots of there's a couple foreign talents who I don't think will get to the final. There are some, Honda's up and coming, but maybe not quite on the trajectory that Yuma Anzai seems to be on at the minute. Yeah. And you can't always count out Suwama, legend of the game. Absolutely, I think it's like his 19th time in this tournament or something ridiculous. So you never count Suwama out, especially when he's running things over there, I'm sure, behind the scenes as well at this point. So but I'd really like to see Yuma Anzai get a big run out of this, and I'd really like to see him in the final, to be honest.
I said this on Twitter, but when you think about like the other, big Puro companies and like their older aces, like, Marufuji is already tapped out of the round robins. I doubt we see Tana in the G1 this year. And, Sawama's still going strong. Like, he's so cool. Yeah. Like, he's still going at it. But I agree. I think that Yuma Anzai is a wild card pick to win it all that I wouldn't be surprised to see win it all, because as I've said before, the difference between All Japan and some other companies is they are not scared to pull the trigger on their young guys. And like Yuma's had a pretty big year against some top names, across like wrestling, especially Puro and Noah and All Japan and New Japan. Like he is, he hasn't had the New Japan match yet, but DDT, I think like he big match versus Kaito Kiyomiya recently. Obviously challenged for the tag belts in DDT. He did the N1 tournament, and also like he wrestled Kento. He's wrestled Yuji Nagata. He's had like these big matches, and a lot of people have been saying like he's just that one step away from really being that complete package of him like becoming this big star. So I would not be surprised. And obviously he has this huge match versus Nakajima coming up, like, challenging for the Triple Crown. So I honestly wouldn't be shocked to see them finally pull the trigger, or as you said, at the very minimum, him make it to the final. Like, I think like it's very clear, like they're all in on him, and as they should be. I wouldn't be shocked to see him in the final as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. And again, I mean, it kind of depends on if we see the B block being expanded with Nakajima being added into it, then that brings up the question of that eventual Nakajima Yuma Anzai match within this tournament. So perhaps that's a reason not to put him in B block or not to have him in the tournament at all. But really excited to see Anzai go far on this. And I think he's the only one in B block which I can see a really clear direction. Suzuki is the current tag champ. Suwama is old veteran. Obviously they're in both of the blocks actually there's a sort of big tag team matchup. In A block you've got Kento and Yuma who are very regularly tag team partners. So that's a nice sort of inter-tag team conflict happening there. What's more interesting with the B block one with Suwama and Suzuki is that what I love about their tag team is almost set up around the fact that they don't really get on very well.
Yes.
And in the middle of their matches they're like hitting each other and joking around, and it's got that comedy aspect, but it's very funny to see them sort of bickering and fighting during their matches, and it'll be interesting to see that dynamic change as they're sort of pitted against each other in a tournament scenario. But and Honda's great. really love Honda. Actually, I think he stands out. He has a character which is makes him stand out, and it's a bit different from what you usually see in All Japan and other Puro promotions. I think he's very just charismatic. He got something different about him. But again, he's just not on the same trajectory I see Yuma and Zion at the minute. I think I'd like to see, I like them as a tag team together, and I like to see Honda succeed. But as a single star, I see Yuma and Zai as the kind of golden boy of this generation.
Absolutely.
And then the other, the two foreigners, interesting, I would say. Like you said, I definitely expected there to be more Puro promotions getting involved, and with the rumors about potential WWE involvement, it kind of feels like that there were a few missed opportunities here, maybe a few late picks to be in B block, to be honest, because Hartley Jackson doesn't excite me. I know I've done a little bit of research, and I see he was a coach at NXT at one point, is now the head coach at Pro Wrestling 01. So, an experienced fighter, has done some professional lethway fighting, so a real shooter essentially. But as someone who I'm not familiar with, and I'm sure the All Japan audience isn't familiar with either, and the same goes for Road Crew, who I think is a basic unknown for All Japan. So, slightly disappointed on that angle. So, these are all the things that lead me to believing Yuma Anzai is the horse I'm backing in this race, certainly.
Yeah, I think also, like you said, the tag matchups I think are so interesting. Like the one-on-one matchups, like Kento and Yuma Yagi is always going to be a hit. Like those two, they just have great chemistry, whether they're teaming or whether they're going against each other. Like that's always going to be a hit. And then over on the B block, you have Suwama and Suzuki, who are also always have their like drama, which is very entertaining to watch. But I think that, and especially like this is being recorded directly after the DDT show, but I think Honda has a ton of potential, and I don't. Although I don't think he might beat Anzai, I think like this is an opportunity for him to kind of like break out, and really like show what he can do. Because I think like he's a guy who's really grown on me. Like I think he has a ton of potential. He knows who he is. Like he's very, very clear set. Like and as far as like knowing his character and like I think like he's just a unit, man. Like I think that's going to be a very interesting matchup, and I think it's one of those matchups that really sets the stage for the future of just like really two guys that. I think that All Japan can really depend on going forward. And so, obviously, those are like some clear-cut things. We still don't know where Rei Saito is going to be inserted. If he's inserted in the B block, then I will say I actually was present for when him and his brother faced each other. And that match was so good. And I think that they have chemistry. So if they're added to the same block, I think like that's another one that expect real greatness from, and I think that those two have really progressed a lot as wrestlers. They haven't been doing this very long. They have not been doing this very long at all, but they've really progressed fairly quickly. And over on A block, one guy that I think that is super, interesting and who has progressed really quickly over the past 6 to 8 months is Hokuto Omori. Working with Nakajima, I think you could tell his confidence is through the roof now. Like he's really progressed, and so I'm interested to see how he pans out. He's going to have some really big A+ matchups versus Kento and then Yuma Yagi, some really big stuff. So interested to see, but. When you look at these dream matches, like, not even caring who wins, when you look at this currently, what are those matchups that stand out to you that you just really, really want to see?
Well, I'm glad you just brought up Omori because, like you said, he's in that stacked A block. and he is, I think he's 28, so I think he's kind of this half or maybe a full generation ahead of some of the younger guys, and this promotion's full of really young, great talent. And Amori's sort of on that cusp of that age where you expect someone that age to sort of progress to be kind of one of the top guys. And he's recently he's been tagging a lot, and but with like a variety of really, really great talents. He's tagged with Miyahara and with Nakajima, so he's had this recent experience of sort of being tested out by some of the top guys, and it does feel he's kind of on that cusp. So in this block, it's not short on talent. He's got Ashino, previous champion, the previous winner of this tournament last year. So that's a really interesting matchup. But also, seeing Omori go up against Yuma, Ayagi, and Kento is like, those are three great matches. They're going to be really, really awesome, just on a pure matchup. And I'm just excited, overall to see how Omori does, because I think he's, I think, often when we discuss All Japan, I think he might go under the radar slightly because we're so big on Yuma Anzai and Honda, and they're around 24, somewhere around that age. So he's sort of I think he's a bit of a sleeper, especially hidden in that A block with some of the promotion's biggest hitters. So yeah, definitely looking forward to his sort of those three big matches for Omori out the A block, and then looking at big matches in the B block. I'm looking forward to that Sawama Suzuki matchup a lot, and the Yuma Anzai Honda again. So two tag teams essentially being pitted against each other. Bit of internal conflict. Really enjoy that always. So those are sort of the matches I'm looking forward to the most, I think.
Yeah, so I am interested in all of those. I think that I'm interested to see Yuma versus Sawama. Mm-hmm. I think the future ace versus, the past ace, I think that's going to be a really cool dynamic. And I think that Sawama can really test him in some ways that, maybe some of the younger, top guys really can. I think that Sawama can test. He's a really good test for just about anybody, and I'm really excited. Sawama versus Honda. I think that would be just a slap fest. It really makes me really excited. I think, and honestly, I'm really excited to see Jun Saito versus everybody, because we don't really see him, wrestle as a singles wrestler pretty often. And also even Ray just recently did the King of DDT tournament. So we saw him, do some singles work there, but we don't get to see it. We're seeing more of that from June. And I like what I've been seeing. So I would like to see him versus, Anzai and Sawama and Suzuki and definitely Honda. I think that could be a really cool dynamic. And then over on the A block, I think that Yuma Yagi versus Kuroshio Tokyo Japan would be so entertaining. I feel like it would be so entertaining. I think that Yuma has a great balance. He's one person who gets it when it comes to balancing comedy and just being a freaking awesome performer. And I think that this would be just so entertaining, a great match. I think that's going to be super exciting. I think that Ashino obviously is going to have a good match with just about everybody. And I think Amuro just going to rise to the occasion. Mori is going to just rise to the occasion, against all these top guys. Now, Ren Ayabi, this is his first tournament. So I'm interested to see how he rises to the occasion in some of these top matchups. I think that's going to be a very interesting story here. And honestly, as always, Kenta versus Yuma is always a treat, but I'm interested to see what Kento does versus these foreigners, honestly, just to see, I feel like he could have a good match with a broomstick. And so I'm just interested to see what he pulls off, there. I think that, A block is definitely more stacked with talent. And then when you add Ray Saito into the mix now, who I think will be added on A block. I think Yuma Yagi is going to be a really great matchup, especially since, the tag match got canceled. And I was so upset because like the build was great. The press
Yeah.
conference was hilarious with Yuma and Kento, doing all these Saito impersonations. And so I'm excited to finally see Ray mix it up with those two, like one-on-one. I think that Ray Saito versus Hokuto Mori is super interesting matchup. I'm always just, and I think, versus Ashino, I think would be absolutely like fantastic. And then over in B Block, if Nakajima is added, I think the possibilities are endless, but I really would love to see Nakajima versus Suwama. I think that.
Yeah.
And, especially since, Nakajima has kind of been running this invader angle and, in All Japan of basically kind of like invading, and nothing says All Japan more than Suwama. And so finally having that singles match, I think would be super special. So I'm truly excited for this tournament. And I'm trying not to get my hopes up too bad, but honestly, All Japan really has not disappointed me yet. Like, ever since like I started watching, and I'm a bit of a late bloomer when it comes to All Japan, but I haven't been disappointed yet. Everything delivers, and the booking, even if I might not 100% agree with something, everything that they book makes sense. Like it doesn't feel like it comes out of left field. And I truly feel like whoever wins this tournament, everything that anybody who goes to the finals, I think that these are all very intentional decisions, which I think is all that you can really ask for a wrestling company. Like, you're not always going to, your faves are not going to win it every time. Like, you're not always going to get exactly what you want. All I ask is that things make sense. Make sense, and can set up the future, the summer, because I think that All Japan is in a crucial position now to where more and more eyes are on them. I think now more than ever, and they can really elevate as to become like the leaders in the Puro space, because I think that Puro right now is lacking identity and direction and leadership. And I think that All Japan has the tools to possibly be that leadership. And I think all of that really starts with Champion Carnival. It's just my 2 cents on there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, I'm not I've been watching All Japan for over a year now, and it's the promotion that the Puro promotion I watch consistently. I watch almost every single show, almost every single match of every show. It's the one promotion in Japan I really love, and like you said, I like the booking is generally quite logical. Yep. They're not afraid to chop and change their champs. They sort of follow the momentum of people. They're not afraid to give people the belt if they've earned it, if they're a bit inexperienced. I mean, you think in any other promotion, Jun and Ray Saito probably don't get the belts as early as they did.
Yep.
They're still pretty rough around the edges. They probably don't get the big singles matches that Jun Saito's had recently. Thinking of his match against Nakajima, which was by no means a technical masterpiece, but they're more willing to sort of put those matches on and give these people these opportunities. And like I said, just go. They're not afraid to drop the bells and change things on the fly and give their younger talent lots of opportunities. As well as obviously they've got some great veterans. Since you'd think they'd feel the absence of Ishikawa leaving, but Suwama's still around. They're still, even Miyahara is no spring chicken at this point, but very much in his prime. So yeah, it's just a joy to watch, I think, and I think it feels very consistent, and it feels like it has an identity, and they find a really nice balance, I find, with really good professional wrestling, but even their most sort of serious competitors, they're Kento Miyahara and Yuma Aoyagi show this in spades, that they're quite happy to get silly with it and do comedy stuff, and they can so that A block having oh my god, Joroshio Tokyo in it is just like that sort of a bit of an inspired inclusion.
Yes.
I think he's been in it before, but it's something where like just having that element allows you to sort of break up A block, and instead of these big heavy hitters having these serious matches one after the other, you're going to have those Tokyo matches where he's just going to change the dynamic of things, add a bit of levity. And it's the same on the other side. You know, Sawama is this, you know, big hulking man, loves smashing people around, but he's perfectly happy with, you know, doing some funny spots in the matches and changing up. And it's this kind of, the whole roster seems to have that ability, and that even their younger talent just have that ability to have put on those really serious matches, but then add a bit of levity to it and change things depending on their opponent. And it makes this fairly tight roster kind of open up because they've just got a bit more versatility to everyone. And yeah, it just really helps. And you know, this tournament is kind of set up to allow for that, like, you know, Tokyo's inclusion. But I know we haven't spoken much about Ren Ayabe, and he's quite an interesting inclusion in this because, you know, we've been watching him recently, and you know, I like him. He's a big guy, right? He's 6'7" or something. He's huge.
Yes.
His match against Nakajima was fine. You know, I'm not going to rave about the match, but it was sort of like, again, in other promotions, Ren Ayabe doesn't get the match against the champ, right? And in this, it opens up the show, you know. And I like Nakajima's been doing that. Like lots of the recent shows in the Excite series and the Dream series, first match on the card, Nakajima versus a young guy, and
he did it with the Mori too.
Yeah. So I really like how they've been setting this up, and it'd be interesting to see how Ayabe does. I don't see lots of wins coming for him, but I see some. You know, looking at the A block, there are certainly lots of opportunities for him to really prove himself. So, yeah, really enjoying it, and there's lots and lots of interesting matchups and stories to come out of this to set them up for the year. And like you said, All Japan are in a prime position, even though they've had this kind of weird. You know, they've had offers to be bought out earlier this year and at the end of last year. They've had the NXT involvement, which is up in the air at the minute, it seems. And even throughout all that, they've seemed to have maintained their identity. They've seemed to have maintained their direction, even with Ishikawa, who was believed to be like the head booker, essentially, and someone who was conducting everything. They seem to have kept their momentum and their direction throughout all of this. So yeah, it's a big year for All Japan, especially when you know, the other Japanese promotions are having a bit of a rocky time. So it's exciting.
Yeah, I think they just know who they are, and I think before I got into All Japan, like obviously current All Japan, because I think like so many people, everybody talks about like vintage All Japan and watches that stuff back and thinks about it so fondly, but when you look at current All Japan, like I remember being told like by so many people, like, yeah, it's just so boring. It's just a whole bunch of old guys, right? And like it's just a whole bunch of old guys, like almost like a retirement home, like, you know, like a pure retirement home. And I think like they had that perception for so long of it being boring and like all these different things. And like I like to think of it for anybody, like if you watch like American sports, NBA, right? Like there's your teams that, you know, have a ton of money and they can like, you know, build a super team overnight. And then you have your teams that kind of like, I think of like the 76ers of Philadelphia 76ers, who for years they tanked every single year. And then they slowly rebuilt themselves through the draft every year. And then suddenly everybody woke up and they were a title contender. And I think that this is All Japan of just like, you know, they didn't have like, you know, the big stars, like, you know, they weren't recruiting like, you know, these big stars. They didn't have that, but they were silently and slowly rebuilding themselves through the draft. And then suddenly one day everybody woke up and All Japan had the best young prospects out of just about any company. Everybody is complete. Like not just like, potential, but complete. When you look at Yuma Oyagi, who is how old? 27? Like
28, I think. Yeah.
28?
Yeah.
Like, there's who's already held the Triple Crown, killed it, held all, basically the top belts and everything. Look at every other company, everybody else his age is still waiting for like that first title shot.
Yeah, he's 28. He's been the heavyweight, the Triple Crown champ, the tag champ, and he's won the Champion Carnival.
Exactly. And I think this roster, it's tight, but it's given so many people an opportunity. I think of going back to the junior heavyweight match. Think of like Hayato, like, them knowing when to pull the trigger. Dan Tamura is going to hold that belt again, and he's freaking fantastic.
He's great. Yeah, he's really that match was spectacular.
So good.
Yeah, he's great.
And his reign, it might have been short, but it was so powerful. Like I remember, like the match versus El Lindemann. I was forced to like watch that, and that was really like my first real time like paying attention to him. And I was like, oh my gosh, this guy is fantastic. And they have these young stars, and I think that what separates them from guys in other companies is because they are wrestling other top guys every night.
Yeah.
They are getting those experiences, whether they lose or not. And I think that's the thing about Anzai that separates him from so many of his peers. Even if he loses, he's getting that big match experience early. So by the time that they're ready to put that title on him, he's ready. Versus, let's think about New Japan. Suddenly, it's these guys being pushed into these big matches for the first time. And it's because all the main eventers, are gone, but they should have been prepped for that, long before. Like, we talked about, last time, the G1 being a massive missed opportunity by putting all the young guys in a block together when they could have been wrestling, like, these established main eventers and getting better. Yes, like, they might have lost, but it's only building them for the future. And so I think that All Japan has done a great job of building their guys, of building their young guys, and making them efficient, and also utilizing the veterans properly, knowing when to win, knowing when to lose. Kento, as much as he wins, he also, knows how to lose. And it just really setting themselves up for the future. And so I think that they've just done a really great job of rebuilding themselves silently. And, I said this coming out of All Together, going into All Together again, All Japan was the least known promotion out of the three between Japan, Noah, and All Japan, clearly. Like, I personally wasn't as familiar with them. And I walked out of that saying, oh, I need to start watching. And I did. Like, I became obsessed with, like, they ended up becoming my favorite out of the three afterwards, just because they took every single opportunity that they were given between capitalizing off of Noah with the, with the Muda shows. And so being able to, work the Tokyo Dome and, have Kento and Suwama do that. They capitalized off of sending, Yuma Anzai over to the N1 tournament. They capitalized off of All Together again. All of these different opportunities, they really built themselves up in the process, brought more eyes to the product, but still focused on this young core of really building themselves up. And so I think that they have the most potential right now to do so much. And hopefully, what I'm hoping by next year, when Champion Carnival comes around, they're going to be able, like, these outside, spots are going to be filled with more top level talent. Like, like guys from like either Noah or New Japan or like, from the States, because like, I think that there's a lot of like, there's a lot of American talent who can really benefit from being like, from doing like, All Japan right now, just because I think that, I'm not going to say New Japan is overrated, but there's only but so much that you're going to be able to do, that you're going to be allowed to do. And even so, like, you know, you might be working academy in the States, but, you know, like actually getting like a legit tour, or even Noah is always a little bit like, you know, hit or miss. But if you're doing like a tour in all Japan, you're almost guaranteed to wrestle at least 2 to 3 top guys while you're there.
Yeah.
Get like some quality singles matches under your belt, like with some of the best. And so
Yeah.
this is the best, like, you know, it's just so much value right now, I think, these guys. And truly, like, they really send a message to like not accept excuses from other promotions, because when you think about all of the turmoil they've had behind the scenes,
Mm-hmm.
and the fact that for the most part, outside of maybe the actress girl stuff, the quality of the product and everything has not changed. In fact, it's potentially gotten better depending on who you ask. That's really insane.
Yeah, I think they've, you know, recently in the last couple of months, you know, the beginning of 2024, I think they've only strengthened. And, you know, as someone who was watching the, you know, the whole shows, all of the shows for like the last year or so, you know, I definitely I'll watch a full card now, and I'll feel even the undercard super strong, and it helps when you have a Nakajima who's willing to, you know, first match on the card, you know, I'll fight Ryo Inoue, you know. So again, another young talent, and I mean, we can just look at the young talent that All Japan is working with at the minute, which is really strengthening their lower card and mid card, not just going for the, you know, the junior belt, but just throughout up and down the card in the multi-mans and the tag matches. Not only do you have, you know, Ryo Inoue, Ren Ayabe, Yuma Anzai, Honda, you know, you can go through them all. They've even, you know, they're even helping, you know, Fuminori Abe had a match with Nakajima like a few days ago, and he's not even signed. You know, this is like young talent who they're just uplifting all the time. You know, and like you said, this is All Japan has a really, really positive upside for people to come in and just do a tour. Just do a tour. Like Jonathan Gresham came in a few months ago, right? And he had, you know, a few tag matches. You know, he had a match. I think he was against like Sawama. I think he was there. I'm not sure he had a singles, but he was against Nakajima at one point. So he had like big matches. Was there for, you know, just one tour, and you can see how that would impact a young talent from the States or even from another Japanese promotion to come in and just do a tour, and you'll be up against the, you know, the biggest and best talent that All Japan has to offer. But also, if you're up against their younger talent, this is also excellent talent for you to be put in the ring with. So I totally agree that All Japan is like this, quite a tight collective of like just potential, and going there even just for a short period of time is going to be a lot more beneficial than being stuck in an academy somewhere, or being stuck with you know, having matchups which are going to be less, you know, they're going to be have less of an impact on improving your skills and your sort of standing, I think.
Yeah, I'm looking at Cage Match right now, and Jonathan Gresham did a week-long tour and got to work with Atsuki Hayato, Shuji Ishikawa, Hokuto Mori, Minoru Suzuki, Abe, Fuminori Abe, Hikaru Sato, L. Lindemann. He actually got a singles with Lindemann. T-Hawk, Kento, Dan Tamura. Like, you know, you're not going to get that much sometimes from,
No.
you know, literally. And for his tour, a week long, was booked essentially every single night. Like every single night. Like, you know, a lot of times people will have a tour and maybe you get like 2 to 3 matches, if that. But like 5 or 6, like, you know, it's such a great value. Actually, like at the Ashe show on December 1st, I actually had to ask him about his experience in All Japan. He talked about how, you know, how awesome it was. And I think that's one thing that All Japan is really doing well right now, is understanding that the company has to fire off on all cylinders. So you can't have this super cool, awesome heavyweight division if the junior division isn't popping. And right now, like the junior division is just as must-see as the heavyweight division, which I think that's a problem that a lot of places are struggling with. And like even, talking about which I know he's a junior, but I would have loved to see him in this tournament. He was one of those people like, if he ever wants to move up a weight class, like, please join Champion Carnival, man. And I remembered more stuff from last year of opportunities that they took advantage of. Like Saito brothers work DDT pretty regularly, like, and then GLEAT, they're working GLEAT. And I think also that adds to what you were saying earlier about that balance between like this serious wrestling and this charisma and this comedy, because they're getting like this experience everywhere, right? Of these places of they're working DDT, they can do like comedy stuff, and so everybody is just so well rounded. I think, which a lot of rosters don't have. Like we have a lot of people who are good at one thing and one thing only, and I think like that versatility is lacking. And if you look, in the past, because I was actually on a Suwama binge a few weeks ago. And if you look at the top guys, even look at Hiroshi Tanahashi, the top, and Marufuji, the top guys back then in Puro were working everywhere. Like, even if you had one company, you're the ace of that company, you're working everywhere. Tanahashi was working Champion Carnival. Marufuji was doing, G1s and like all these different tournaments, working Ring of Honor and like, working. To be a top guy, you had to wrestle the top guys from all of these different companies. Like, you had to become this complete, all well-rounded product. I mean, for Tanahashi, working at All Japan ended up working great because he finally got to work heel. And, you figured out that, wow, he's actually fantastic heel. You don't get to see it much, obviously. Also, that match he had with Suwama, Champion Carnival Final, if you've never seen it, one of the best matches I've ever seen in my life. Like,
awesome. I haven't seen it. That's like going to the top of my list, though. It sounds awesome.
Absolutely, like, it's really fantastic. Like, I was on a Suwama binge, and like, I was like, holy shit! Like, I've never seen Tanahashi really work heel, often, and he was fantastic. It was like sold out Korakuen crowd, just. Actually, I might, after we finish recording, I might actually go rewatch it. But just saying that, is that well-roundedness that I think really sets it apart. And I'm really excited to see what they do. I don't think that they're doing all together again this year. I don't believe, but I think they're supposed to be doing that big collective show with the 9 group organizations. So we shall see how that goes. And I think that they're going to have to. I think that they are going to have a much bigger role going forward because, like I said, I think that right now, I think Kento should be the ace of Puro right now. Just that ace. Just I don't think anybody else really commands, the position quite like he does right now. Now that Okada is, gone stateside. So a lot of here.
Yeah, I mean, no one commands an audience and no one has that presence, in my opinion, that Kento Miyahara has. I think, with Okada not being there, he really does feel like the baby face in Japan, I think. And, like you said earlier, he's so versatile because he's happy to not be at the top of the card every night. And he's happy to be in the tag division, and he's happy to team up with the younger guys, and allow those, say they get T-Hawk and Lindemann in from GLEAT, and have those guys take on. Okay, they're going to have these serious championship matches for this tour, and Kento and Yuma, they're happy to take a few steps back and okay, we'll do tag stuff then, or we'll team up with someone else, or we'll do something different. And All Japan just feels like from tour to tour, how many different tag teams do we see?
Yes.
It feels like everyone tags with everyone. It just like they just make these teams and they all work. They find out what works and they just sort of change things up, and it keeps it really fresh with the tighter roster that they have. Again, that's just one of their strongest things, I think, is that show to show it feels like the same product, but there's so many new matchups because they're not afraid to just tweak things and
across
try
weight
new things
class
out.
Too. Like it's across weight class too. I love like the foursome between Kento Miyahara, Yuma Yagi, Atsuki Yagi, and Rising Hayato. I feel like we've seen just about every single combination of that match. And I've been entertained every time. Like, we've seen Atsuki and Yuma versus Kento and Hayato, which is great. But we've seen Kento and Yuma versus Atsuki and Hayato, that was my favorite tag match of last year. We've seen all these different things. And like you said, Kento, and I think a lot of the guys are just they can be utilized in so many different ways, and they allow themselves to be utilized in different ways. And I think that is the difference between, yes, your ace and your top star can be the same person, but they're not always the same person.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think an American equivalent, I would say, would be Jon Moxley, right? Like, he's the ace. He might not be the biggest star in the company, but he's the ace because you can put him in the world title picture. You can put him in the tag division. You can put him in the trios division. You can put him, he can be that forbidden door guy that works with your partners in Mexico or Japan, like that all utility type of guy. And I think Kento, 100% fits that bill, in All Japan, which I think makes him even more special. Now, he just happens to be both the ace and the top star, which I think makes that even more, which makes it even better because, for somebody like that in the prime of their career to have the attitude, to not have an attitude of I need to be in the main event every night, companies dream of that,
I know, especially with Nakajima coming in, which it seemed like it was a bit of a surprise to lots of people, even in All Japan, with Nakajima coming in. So for Kento to kind of be able to sort of take a step back and allow Nakajima to shine, and Nakajima really is shining in All Japan and brings a different flavor because he is, compared to the others, he's very much a little more sort of two-dimensional in the fact that he's generally just killing people, being this kind of cruel, just kicking the hell out of people. That's his thing. And while that's going on, you've it's nice that Miyahara can take a step back and he still very much feels like the ace, but doesn't feel like he's overshadowing Nakajima, and vice versa, doesn't feel like his spot's being taken or anything. It's just such a great balance. And you mentioned it earlier that the junior scene at the minute is unbelievable in All Japan. I mean, we're talking about Atsuki Ayagi, who I like to see get a little bit more in that sort of division. But that Rising Hayato finally getting the belt, Dan Tamura, amazing. It's just a really exciting group of talent up and down the card, and having that balance just really, really helps sort of long-term enjoyment. So, I'll watch every single show. I'll enjoy almost everything on the card. And it's just in a really, really, really great space right now.
I think also Atsuki, he has a built-in story when he comes back from injury of just him and Hayato have so much, history. I think that eventual match, which of course we're definitely heading there, is going to be pretty awesome. And I think that, right now, when you see rosters that are super stacked right now, I think that should be the blueprint of your guys should be team players of just being able to be confident and in what you're doing, to not think that a new addition is essentially replacing you. And I think that's one thing about Kento that I think that I admire is you can tell he's very confident in his position, and in a way that he's not he's not worried about what other people are doing, and he's worried about the company. I'm just he sees this as a plus, for the company moving forward, and he's that guy. And Hayato, he flat out said that, with all the management changes and everything, he was ready to leave, but he respects Kento so much. I'm if he was Kento says that this works, this works, I'm on board. When you have guys who are so respected like that, to where everybody just wants to play their role, you can't beat that. You can't beat it with a stick.
And I mean, the thing that stood out, I was watching the I had to catch up on lots of All Japan because I'd gone a month, and I generally like wait until sort of a series is over and then I binge the whole thing, just because of how watching almost every promotion in the world at this point is like it's difficult to catch up. I know you can relate. We both watch a lot of wrestling, right? It's hard to keep up. But recently I was watching the Sawama and Suzuki winning the belts. So against, they were vacant belts, but it was against Yuma and Kento for the belts. And watching Kento Miyahara, he was on the, he was opposite hard cam. Basically, the whole match was just on the apron.
Mm-hmm.
And watching him work that apron from the corner, building up to that hot tag, screaming, like it's in those moments where you look at someone performing and you think like that's the level, right? That's the difference between him and some other wrestlers, where just watching him on the apron was almost as exciting as watching Yuma getting stomped on by Sawama in the ring. I think he's fantastic in every role that he's put into.
Absolutely.
Like a true ace. I'm not sure there's people who compare to him at the minute in modern in promotions right now. I mean, so they're super lucky to have him, and we can never sing enough praises about Kento Miyahara.
Never, but I'm gonna try.
Yes, I'm super excited for him to get. I'd love for him to have a little more international exposure.
Absolutely,
I would kill for him to do a Rev Pro show or go over to the States and do a Mania weekend show. I think that's the I think All Japan are very welcoming about getting independent talents into their promotion. A bit less so about sending people out. I mean, that's part of the thing. If you have a smaller roster, you can't always afford to have people leaving all the time. But I would love for him, because, like we say, you can put him in any ring in any country around the world, and he's getting that crowd over because that's what he does.
Absolutely.
So,
I think, and I'm glad that you said that. I think that you have to think he did what, like 2 to 3 non-All Japan matches last year, and every last one of them were unforgettable to the point where it recruited new fans. And I'm one of them. Like, you think about the match that happened at the Tokyo Dome. I think it was 6-man tag, the tag match.
Yeah, 6-man all together again. Yeah.
So you had the one for the Muda final show, the All Together Again show, and then the Noah show, the One Night Dream. Those 3 matches alone, and that was just in Japan, put him on the radar for so many people. Imagine what he could do if with a bigger platform, and I feel like the Okada match has to happen. I think Okada match has to happen. I don't know how it's going to happen. And you know what? I'm really glad that I said this, because in closing, this is my final point. We need the AEW All Japan partnership. It's time to complete the Trinity. Listen, man, especially after last night, seeing, Shibata versus Danielson, Ayagi versus Takeshita over in DC, and not DC, DDT, if there was ever a time, and because I truly believe only one man can make this possible, and I believe in him, and that's you, Brian Danielson. That's you, Brian Danielson. Brian Danielson, I believe in you, and I believe in just the way that these collision matches have been, popping out. Nagata, Hechicero, Akiyama, it's at this point, it's clear that you can have whatever you want.
Just ask, right? Just ask.
And if anybody can do this, oh my gosh, Brian Danielson, please. This is my plea. I need to see you versus Nakajima. I need to see you versus Kento Miyahara. I need to open a door for Hayato versus Darby. I need the Yuma Oyagi versus Takeshita rematch. I need the Saito brothers wrestling just about anybody in the tag division. Like, listen, like Bryan Danielson, please. Because at this point, accent Bryan Danielson is better than accent Tony Khan when it comes to shit like this. So, Bryan Danielson, if you hear this, please
Make it happen, man. Make
and
it happen.
I understand, like, that I don't know what the president was doing with the WWE relationship and anything. We're sorry. He's sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm apologizing on his behalf. He's sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
It has to happen.
That probably put a spanner in the works of any potential partnership. But seems like, I mean, from what I can tell, there's no one in the Champion Carnival. It seems like that partnership was quite short-lived. If it is ongoing at all, we don't have any information on it. But yeah, I would do anything to see Kento. I mean, Kento Danielson, but like just seeing him in an American ring, in an AEW ring, would be absolutely special. I mean, they announced a tag tournament, and All Japan's got some decent tag teams, so they should have been on the phone, I think. But hopefully it's at some point in the future we'll see a little bit more international collaboration with them. I really hope so.
That Kento Miyahara entrance, that first one is going to hit like crack. Like it's that first. It's like that. He's one of those people, and I think another person who's like that is Mina Shirakawa. Like that first entrance alone is going to dazzle people to where they are just going to be so entranced. And like I am manifesting by Wrestle Dream. There will be All in Japan involvement by Wrestle Dream. We're just going to keep saying it. And also on the Noah tip, Bryan Danielson versus Go Shiozaki. Bryan Danielson versus Go Shiozaki. Bryan Danielson versus Go Shiozaki. Bryan Danielson, you're our only hope. You're our only hope. But I definitely think that international, it's coming. And honestly, New Japan, you want to sell more seats in the dome? Kento Miyahara needs to be on that Wrestle Kingdom card. I think that's an easy layup. Like even if outside of the AEW stuff, like New Japan, you're going to need some outside talent, and especially this year for the G1.
I was to say that G1 seems like that could be a melting pot, right? You get an AEW talent or two, getting someone like Kento, maybe Yuma.
I take
you can have some of those matchups.
I put Miyahara and Anzai, or Miyahara and Oyagi, just because, hey, like that's what happened with Noah a few years ago. Like, they put Marufuji and a young Nakajima in the G1, at the same time. So, there's a precedent for it. And I don't know if Noah really has the talent to send this year, unless they put Kaito back in. And I mean, what's the point of putting Kaito back in without Okada? Obviously I do think that Gabe Kidd and Kaito, I think, still have unfinished business, which I think should definitely have a singles match down the line. But, even outside of the AEW partnership, which I'm still manifesting, New Japan will be fools. Think about the business that it did for Noah last year, for One Night Dream, getting Kento on the card. Like, New Japan to be fools to not get him involved some way, form, or fashion. And Saito brothers should be a no-brainer for World Tag League, honestly.
It would be very funny. Yeah, I mean, I like the Saito brothers. Again, they're rough around the edges. They don't always put on masterclasses, but there are some very entertaining, if nothing else, matchups that could come out of having them in a big tag tournament in any promotion, to be honest.
And at this point, let's just be real. What do you have to lose? The tag division in New Japan is not that great right now anyway.
Yeah, they need the talent. Yeah.
It's not like they're going to be dragging, the quality down or anything. Like
No.
What do you have to lose at this point? And I will say, I think that's really the only thing that All Japan is missing right now. Just that more eyes on the product, some more of those international opportunities. And so I think that, that's a great place to close. Bryan Danielson, You know, you're our only hope.
Please.
You know, please.
Yeah.
You know, if you care at all, please, Brian Danielson, you're our only hope. I sound like Leia and
Yeah.
help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're our only hope. Like that's what keeps playing in my mind. But thank you for joining me for this, Ben. I think it's going to be a
Absolutely.
fun tournament.
Yeah, for sure.
Tweeting about it as it happens. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Lyric Wrestling. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is Lyric Swinton, just my first and last name, to keep up with all the things that I am doing and have done. Where can we find you?
Yeah, just down here at Graps on Taps on Twitter. And yeah, check me out. I'm going to probably do a bit of writing about the Champion Carnival tournament as it's happening. Obviously, I'll be tweeting through it as always. We've got a few weeks until then. And yeah, always talking about All Japan. And like I said, if you're listening to this and you haven't delved into All Japan at all, I think there's no better time than now, just before a big tournament, because that's going to set up your big Triple Crown sort of stories going forward. Like we said, great tag division, great junior division, great Triple Crown heavyweight division. So, there's no better time to get into All Japan than now. And hopefully I'll see some people talking about it online and we can discuss and enjoy watching a bit of All Japan.
Absolutely. I'm super excited. Thank you for joining. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Like he said, there's no better time to get into it than right now. I'm always tweeting match recommendations. So if you ever need some, feel free to hit either of us up. But until next time, thank you for listening, and we'll chat soon. Bye.